3 weeks later, Kepler Station buzzed with activity unlike anything it had seen in decades. Representatives from dozens of worlds had come to witness the formal alliance ceremony between the Velthari pack and the human medical community. What had started as one desperate father trying to save his dying cub had grown into something that would change galactic medicine forever. Kitra ran through the corridors of Wu Jin's clinic, now expanded into a larger space to accommodate the growing number of patients seeking human-style treatment. Her recovery had been complete and miraculous. The small cub was full of energy, her silver fur gleaming with health, and her yellow eyes bright with curiosity about everything around her. "Careful, little hunter," Thrakvel called as his cub nearly knocked over a medical cart in her enthusiasm. Despite his gentle scolding, he could not hide his joy at seeing her so alive and energetic. Every day since her recovery felt like a gift he had never expected to receive. The clinic had been transformed into something unique in the galaxy. Traditional human medical equipment worked alongside Velthari healing techniques. Elder Morgeth had brought several of her people's ancient healing tools, items that had been stored away for centuries but were now being rediscovered and improved with modern understanding. Wu Jin walked through the busy clinic, checking on patients from a dozen different species. Word of Kitra's recovery had spread, and beings from across the galaxy were coming to try this new approach to medicine. Many had conditions that advanced technology had declared incurable, but some were finding relief through the combination of simple human care and traditional Velthari healing methods. "Doctor?" Borum called from across the room. "The Zentoran delegation has arrived for the ceremony." Wu Jin nodded and finished adjusting the IV drip. For a young ethereal whose energy-based body was responding well to carefully balanced electrolyte therapy. Even species made of pure energy, it turned out, needed proper mineral balance to maintain their form in the physical world. Sunja, the human diplomat, entered the clinic with a group of official-looking aliens. The ceremony to formalize the Human Velthari Medical Alliance would take place in the station's main assembly hall, but she wanted the delegates to see the clinic where it all began. "Representatives," she announced, "this is where pack leader Thrakvel brought his dying cub 3 weeks ago. As you can see, it has become something extraordinary." The delegation moved through the clinic with fascination. They saw Velthari healers working with human doctors, sharing techniques that had been developed on opposite sides of the galaxy. They observed patients who had been declared hopeless by conventional medicine, now recovering through the power of combined ancient wisdom and modern knowledge. Elder Morgeth approached the group, moving with the dignity of her great age. "Honorable delegates," she said in her clear voice, "you see here proof that advancement and wisdom are not always the same thing. Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best solutions." A tall Zentoran doctor, her blue skin marked with patterns of silver, stepped forward. "Elder, with respect, how can simple water and salt accomplish what our biomatrix crystals cannot?" "Doctor," Elder Morgeth replied patiently, "your crystals are powerful tools for many conditions, but they work by forcing change in the body. Sometimes what the body needs is not force but support, not override but cooperation." Haewon joined the conversation carrying a data pad with research results. "We have been studying the differences in treatment approaches. Advanced galactic medicine excels at direct intervention, repairing damage, fighting disease, rebuilding tissue. But it often ignores the body's own healing processes. Human and traditional Velthari medicine work differently," Wu Jin added. "We try to understand what the body is trying to do and help it succeed. Sometimes that means using advanced technology. Other times it means providing simple support and letting natural healing take place." The ceremony in the assembly hall was attended by beings from 43 different worlds. The hall was filled with species that rarely gathered in one place: energy beings and crystal dwellers, gas breathers and silicon-based life forms, all come to witness this unprecedented alliance. Thrakvel stood at the center of the hall, wearing ceremonial armor that marked him as a pack leader. But today he was not here as a warrior. He was here as a father whose child had been saved by the kindness of strangers and the wisdom of ages. "Beings of the galaxy," he began, his deep voice carrying clearly through the hall. 3 weeks ago, I believed my cub was going to die. The greatest medical technology in known space had failed to save her. In my desperation, I turned to a species we had always considered primitive. He paused, looking out at the crowd of alien faces. I learned that primitive and simple are not the same thing. I learned that new is not always better than old. Most importantly, I learned that wisdom can come from unexpected places. Wu Jin stepped forward, looking small beside the massive Velthari leader but carrying himself with quiet confidence. Pack leader Thrakvel offers me too much credit. What I did was not special. I simply remembered that medicine is about helping bodies heal, not about using the most advanced technology available. Sunja presented the formal alliance documents, written in 17 different languages and energy patterns to accommodate all the species present. The agreement established the first interspecies medical research center, where traditional healing methods from different worlds would be studied alongside modern technology. This alliance represents more than medical cooperation, Sunja announced. It represents a new way of thinking about progress. Instead of always seeking newer and more complex solutions, we will also preserve and improve the wisdom of the past. Kitra, who had been sitting quietly with Boram during the ceremony, suddenly broke free and ran to her father. The sight of the small cub clinging to the massive pack leader's leg brought a collective sound of approval from the assembled delegates. Thrakvel picked up his daughter gently, holding her high so everyone could see her bright, healthy face. This is why we are here, he said simply. Because sometimes the most important things are also the simplest things. As the ceremony concluded and the delegates began to disperse, many of them made plans to visit the new medical center. Species that had relied entirely on their advanced technology for centuries were suddenly interested in learning about traditional healing methods. Back in the clinic, as evening settled over Kepler Station, Wu Jin found himself alone with Kitra, while Thrakvel attended a meeting with other pack leaders who had arrived to learn about the alliance. The young cub was playing with a simple puzzle toy, her small claws working carefully to fit the pieces together. She looked up at Wu Jin with bright, intelligent eyes. Thank you for the water, she said in her clear young voice. Wu Jin smiled and knelt down beside her. You are very welcome, little one. Will you teach me to be a healer like you? Kitra asked, returning to her puzzle. I want to give water to beings who are thirsty. I think you would make an excellent healer, Wu Jin replied. And yes, I will teach you everything I can. Through the clinic window, the lights of Kepler Station stretched out like stars, representing hundreds of different species living and working together. But now there was something new among them, the understanding that wisdom could come from anywhere, that simple solutions could solve complex problems, and that sometimes the most primitive medicine was also the most powerful. On his desk, Wu Jin kept a small carved figure that Kitra had made for him during her recovery. It showed a human and a Velthari standing together, hands clasped in friendship. Beside it sat a simple glass of water, clear and clean, reminding him every day that the most important medicine was often the simplest medicine. The pack leader's dying cub had been saved not by the marvels of galactic technology, but by the oldest healing wisdom in the universe, giving the body what it needs and the time to heal itself. And in saving one small life, they had opened a path to saving countless others. The stars outside continued their ancient dance, unchanged by the events on the small station. But for the beings who lived among them, everything had changed. They had learned that progress was not about abandoning the past, but about combining the best of old and new, simple and complex, wisdom and technology. And in a small clinic in the human quarter of Kepler Station, that lesson continued every day, one patient at a time. Word spread through Kepler Station like wildfire. The story seemed impossible. A human doctor with primitive equipment had saved a Velthari cub when the galaxy's most advanced medical technology had failed. Aliens throughout the station whispered about it in their various languages, some with wonder, others with disbelief. Kitra continued to improve hour by hour. By the next morning, she was sitting up in the clinic bed drinking water on her own and eating small pieces of food that Boram had prepared specially for her. Her silver fur was regaining its shine, and her yellow eyes sparkled with curiosity as she looked around the human clinic. Thrakvel had not left her side, sleeping in a chair beside her bed despite Wu Jin's offers of more comfortable arrangements. The pack leader was struggling with emotions he had never felt before. Relief and joy mixed with something much more complex. The knowledge that he owed his cub's life to a species his people had always considered inferior. The other Velthari warriors had initially been skeptical of the story. How could salt water and simple care accomplish what crystal healing and energy medicine could not? But seeing Kitra awake and alert, playing with a simple toy that Boram had given her, they could not deny the evidence of their own eyes. Pack leader, his second-in-command Velana said quietly as she entered the clinic. There is news from the station. Many beings are talking about what happened here. Some say it is impossible. Others say the humans have hidden knowledge that they have not shared. Thrakvel looked at Wu Jin, who was checking Kitra's vital signs with his simple instruments. Is this some secret human medicine? He asked. Something you have kept hidden from other species? Wu Jin laughed, a warm sound that made Kitra look up with interest. No secrets, Pack Leader. Everything I used is known throughout the galaxy. Saline solution, electrolyte replacement, careful observation. The problem is that most advanced civilizations stopped using these methods when they developed more sophisticated technology. But why? Velana asked, her warrior's mind struggling to understand. If these methods work, why abandon them? Haywan, who had returned to check on Kitra's progress, answered the question. Because they seem too simple. When you can rebuild a heart with quantum energy or cure cancer with nanobots, giving someone salt water feels primitive. But bodies are complex systems. Sometimes simple problems need simple solutions. A new voice spoke from the clinic entrance. She speaks wisdom, though I am ashamed it took a human to remind us of it. Everyone turned to see an elderly Velthari female entering the clinic. She was smaller than the warriors but carried herself with unmistakable authority. Her fur was silver with age, and her eyes held the depth of long experience. The warriors immediately showed respect, lowering their heads in greeting. Elder Morgeth, Thrakvel said with surprise, rising to his feet. I did not know you were on the station. I came as soon as I heard the news, the elder replied. A human healer saving a Velthari cub with ancient methods? I had to see this for myself. Elder Morgeth approached Kitra's bed slowly, her old eyes taking in every detail of the simple clinic. She examined the IV equipment, the basic monitoring devices, and the humble surroundings with great interest. May I examine the child? She asked Wu Jin politely. Wu Jin stepped aside with a respectful nod. Elder Morgeth placed her hands on Kitra gently, feeling her pulse, checking her breathing, and looking into her eyes. Her examination was remarkably similar to what Wu Jin had done, using touch and observation rather than complex instruments. Fascinating, she murmured. Pack leader, do you know what this human did to save your cub? He gave her water and salt, Thrakvel replied, still somewhat embarrassed by the simplicity of it. Elder Morgeth smiled, an expression that transformed her ancient face. He gave her what her body needed to heal itself. Nothing more, nothing less. She turned to face the assembled Velthari. Do you know what we called this centuries ago on our homeworld? The warriors looked confused, but Thrakvel felt a spark of memory. The old healing way, he said slowly. Exactly. Before we joined the galactic community, before we gained access to crystal healing and energy medicine, our healers used these same principles. They understood that the body knows how to heal itself if given proper support. Elder Morgeth walked to where Wu Jin stood and bowed her head respectfully. Doctor, you have not only saved this child's life, you have reminded us of wisdom we lost in our rush to embrace advanced technology. I only did what any doctor should do, Wu Jin replied humbly. I looked at what was wrong and tried to fix it. But that is exactly the point, Elder Morgeth said. The other healers looked at her failing organs and tried to force them to work better. You looked at why they were failing and treated the cause. Kitra, who had been quietly listening to this conversation while playing with her toy, suddenly spoke up in her small voice. The nice human gave me water when I was thirsty. That is all. Everyone in the room stopped talking and looked at the young cub. In her innocent words was a truth that all the advanced medical technology had missed. Yes, little one, Elder Morgeth said gently. That is all. And sometimes that is everything. Thrakvel felt the weight of understanding settling on his shoulders. His people had spent centuries believing that newer and more complex meant better. They had abandoned their traditional healing methods as primitive and outdated, but in doing so, they had lost something valuable. Elder, he said carefully, how many of our young ones have we lost to conditions that advanced medicine could not cure? The old female's expression grew sad. Too many, Pack Leader. Too many cubs who might have survived with simpler care. Then we have been fools, Thrakvel said bluntly. We have traded wisdom for technology and called it progress. Not fools, Wu Jin interjected gently. Just beings who forgot that old knowledge and new knowledge can work together. On Earth, we use quantum scanners and nanomedicine when we need them. But we also use clean water and careful observation when that is what works best. Elder Morgoth nodded approvingly. This is wisdom. To use the right tool for the right problem, whether it is ancient or modern. Kyung-Soo, the station's human cultural liaison, appeared in the clinic doorway. He had been called to help manage the growing attention that Kitra's recovery was attracting throughout the station. Dr. Wu Jin, he said, there are requests from medical facilities on 12 different worlds asking about your treatment methods. And, Pack Leader Thrakvel, there is a message from the Velthari High Council requesting a full report. Thrakvel looked down at Kitra, who was now alert enough to be curious about all the visitors in the clinic. His cub was alive because of simple human kindness and ancient wisdom. The debt he owed could never be repaid with mere gratitude. Doctor, he said formally, by the laws of my people, I owe you a life debt for saving my cub. Traditionally, this would mean I offer my service to you, but I want to propose something different. What do you have in mind? Wu Jin asked. Thrakvel straightened to his full impressive height, his voice carrying the authority of a pack leader making an important decision. I propose an exchange of knowledge. Your people's medical wisdom for ours. Your understanding of simple healing combined with our knowledge of the body's strength and endurance. An alliance, Elder Morgoth said with approval, to combine the old ways with the new human wisdom with Velthari strength. Wu Jin looked at Kitra, who was reaching out to touch his hand with her small paw. In her trusting eyes, he saw the future that this alliance could create. Yes, he said simply, I accept. Dr. Wu Jin stepped into the corridor and knelt beside the massive alien, who was still clutching his small cub. The pack leader looked up with yellow eyes filled with tears and desperation. Wu Jin had never seen a Velthari up close before, but he could recognize a parent's fear in any species. Please, Wu Jin said gently, speaking in the common trade language. Let me help you. Bring her inside. Thrakvel hesitated. This human was so small compared to him, barely reaching his shoulder even when the pack leader was on his knees. The man looked young, maybe 30 Earth years, with kind dark eyes and gentle hands. He wore simple medical clothes, not the fancy robes of the Zentauran healers or the shining armor of the Machina doctors. Your medicine is primitive, Thrakvel said, his voice rough with emotion. The greatest healers in the galaxy have failed. What can you do? Wu Jin looked at the small cub in the alien's arms. Even without examining her, he could see she was very sick. Her breathing was shallow and fast. Her skin had a grayish color and she was completely unconscious. Every moment they wasted talking was precious time lost. Maybe nothing, Wu Jin admitted honestly, but she is dying now and I am here. Will you let me try? Something in the human's voice made Thrakvel nod. Perhaps it was the lack of arrogance that he had heard from the other doctors. This human made no grand promises or claims of superiority. He simply offered to try. With great care, Thrakvel stood and followed Wu Jin into the clinic. The other Velthari warriors crowded around the entrance, too large to fit inside but unwilling to leave their pack leader alone with strangers. Inside, the clinic was simple and clean. The walls were white and sunlight from artificial windows made everything bright and warm. A human woman with short black hair hurried over to help. She was small and quick, wearing the same simple medical clothes as the doctor. This is Boram, my nurse, Wu Jin explained as he guided Thrakvel to an examination table. Please, lay her down here gently. Thrakvel placed Kitra on the table with infinite care. Under the bright lights, she looked even worse than before. Her silver fur was dull and lifeless, and her small body seemed fragile as a bird's. Wu Jin washed his hands thoroughly and put on thin plastic gloves. He began his examination with simple tools that looked ancient to Thrakvel's eyes. A device to listen to her heart, a small light to check her eyes, and a simple thermometer to measure her temperature. Tell me about her symptoms, Wu Jin said as he worked. When did this start? How has she been eating and drinking? Thrakvel found himself answering questions he had not been asked by the other doctors. They had been more interested in scanning Kitra with their machines than hearing about how she became sick. He told Wu Jin about how the cub had been playing normally 3 days ago, then suddenly became tired and stopped eating. By the next morning she could barely stand, and by evening she had fallen unconscious. Has she been on the station long? Boram asked, taking notes on an old-fashioned paper tablet. Is this her first time away from your homeworld? Yes, Thrakvel replied, surprised by the question. We came here for trading negotiations. She was excited to see new places and meet new beings. Wu Jin nodded thoughtfully as he continued his examination. He pressed gently on Kitra's abdomen, checked her pulse at several points, and looked carefully at her mouth and throat. All of this was done with his hands and simple instruments, not the complex machines the other doctors had used. Her heart rate is very fast, he said to Bo-Ram, and her blood pressure is low. Look at her gums, they are pale and dry. Dehydration? Bo-Ram suggested. Severe dehydration, yes, but there is something else. Wu Jin lifted one of Kitra's eyelids carefully. See how her eyes are sunken? And feel how cold her extremities are despite the fever. Thrakvel watched this examination with growing confusion and anger. The other doctors had spent hours with their scanning machines and energy readings. This human was just touching his cub with his hands and looking at her with his eyes. How could such primitive methods tell him anything useful? You are wasting time, he growled. Use your scanners.
Take samples.
Do something real. Wu Jin looked up at him calmly. I am doing something real. Sometimes the oldest methods tell us the most important things. He turned to Bo-Ram. Please prepare a basic metabolic panel and electrolyte test. Also, I want to check her blood oxygen levels. Bo-Ram moved to a machine that looked simple compared to the quantum analyzers Thrakvel had seen before. She drew a small sample of Kitra's blood with a thin needle, something that made several of the Velthari warriors outside growl with concern. This blood test will tell us about the chemistry in her body, Wu Jin explained to Thrakvel. The advanced scanners you mentioned look at many things, but sometimes they miss the simple problems. While they waited for the results, Wu Jin continued his examination. He used a device to measure the oxygen in Kitra's blood and checked her reflexes with a small hammer. Everything he did was gentle and careful, and Thrakvel could see that despite his primitive tools, the human knew what he was doing. Pack leader, Bo-Ram said quietly. May I ask what your cub has been eating and drinking since you arrived at the station? Thrakvel thought about this. The same food we always eat. Meat from the supply ships, water from the station systems. What about the air? Wu Jin asked. Kepler Station uses artificial atmosphere processors to create breathable air for all species. Has Kitra been spending time in areas with mixed atmosphere? Of course, Thrakvel replied, confused by the question. The trading halls, the recreation areas. She wanted to see everything. Wu Jin and Bo-Ram exchanged a meaningful look. The blood test results appeared on a simple screen, and Wu Jin studied them carefully. What he saw made him nod with understanding. I think I know what is wrong with your cub, he said quietly. But first, I need to ask you something important. In your people's medical history, do young ones ever have strong reactions to new substances? Things that make them very sick very quickly? Thrakvel's yellow eyes widened. Yes, he said slowly. It is rare, but it happens. We call it fire blood. The cub's body fights against something that should not harm them. An allergic reaction, Bo-Ram said to Wu Jin in human language. Combined with severe dehydration and electrolyte imbalance, Wu Jin replied. He turned back to Thrakvel. I believe your cub is having what humans call an allergic reaction to something in the station's artificial atmosphere. Her body is fighting against it so hard that she has lost too much water, and the chemistry in her blood is wrong. Thrakvel stared at him. The other doctors said nothing about this. Their machines scanned everything. Their machines were looking for diseases and infections, Wu Jin explained. They were not looking for something so simple. Sometimes the most dangerous problems are also the most basic ones. The pack leader felt a spark of hope for the first time in days. Can you fix this? Can you save her? Wu Jin was quiet for a moment, checking Kitra's pulse again. I think so, he said finally. But I need to try a treatment that will seem very simple to you. Almost too simple. Are you willing to trust me? Thrakvel looked down at his cub's still face. She was dying. The greatest medical technology in the galaxy had failed her, but this small human with his primitive tools and gentle hands was offering her a chance. Yes, he said quietly. I will trust you. Thrakvel's massive claws scraped against the metal floor of Kepler Station as he carried his dying cub through the crowded corridors. The young Kitra lay still in his arms, her small chest barely rising and falling with each weak breath. Her fur, once bright silver like moonlight, had turned dull and gray. Her eyes remained closed, and no matter how gently he spoke her name, she would not wake. The pack leader stood nearly 3 meters tall, his wolf-like features marking him as one of the feared Velthari warriors. Other aliens moved quickly out of his way as he walked, some because they recognized his species' reputation for violence, others because they could see the desperation in his yellow eyes. His pack followed behind him, 6 other Velthari warriors who had sworn to protect their leader and his family. They walked in silence, their heads low with shame and worry. For 3 days, Thrakvel had searched every medical facility on the massive space station. Kepler Station was home to over 2 million beings from dozens of different worlds. Surely someone here could save his cub, but each doctor had given him the same terrible news. The first stop had been the Zentauran Healing Center, where tall, blue-skinned doctors used crystal machines that could fix broken bones in minutes. Their leader, a female with patterns of silver on her skin, had run Kitra through their biomatrix scanner 3 times. The crystals had glowed and hummed, reading every cell in the cub's body. But when the scan finished, the doctor had simply shaken her head. "The child's life force is fading," she had said in her musical voice. "Our crystals cannot restore what is already lost. I am sorry, Pack Leader. There is nothing we can do." Next, he had tried the ethereal communion healers, beings of pure energy who lived inside robot bodies. They claimed they could heal both body and spirit with the power of their minds. 3 of them had surrounded Kitra, their mechanical hands glowing with purple light as they reached into her thoughts and dreams. For a moment, Thrakvel had felt hope, but the healers had pulled back, their artificial voices flat with failure. "The young one's spirit calls out in pain, but the source lies beyond our reach," they had said. "Her body fights against something we cannot see or touch. We cannot heal what we cannot understand." Finally, in desperation, Thrakvel had brought Kitra to the Machina Medical Center, where artificial intelligence units with databases containing the medical knowledge of 1,000 worlds worked day and night. The main AI, a silver robot with cameras for eyes, had examined Kitra for hours. It had taken samples of her blood, scanned her brain, and tested every organ in her small body. When the tests were complete, the robot had delivered its verdict in a cold, mechanical voice. "Analysis complete. Subject shows systematic organ failure with unknown causation. Current medical knowledge insufficient for treatment. Probability of survival, less than 5%. Recommend preparation for termination of life functions." That had been 6 hours ago. Since then, Kitra had grown weaker. Her breathing was so shallow now that Thrakvel had to watch carefully to see if her chest moved at all. Her skin felt cold through her fur, and she had not opened her eyes since morning. The other members of his pack had tried to convince him to give up. Pack Leader, his second-in-command Valana, had said quietly, "Perhaps it is time to accept the will of the hunting grounds. The cub has fought bravely, but her hunt is ending." But Thrakvel could not accept this. Kitra was his only child, born to him and his mate Silra before a trading dispute had taken his beloved's life 2 years ago. The cub was all he had left of her, the only thing that made his heart feel warm in the cold emptiness of space. He would not let her die while there was still breath in his body. As he walked through the station's central hub, Thrakvel noticed how the other aliens looked at him. Some showed pity, others fear, but most simply turned away. In Velthari culture, showing weakness was dangerous. A pack leader who could not protect his own family was not worthy of leading others, but Thrakvel no longer cared about such things. His pride meant nothing if Kitra died. The commercial district was busy with traders from dozens of worlds buying and selling goods. The air filled with 100 different scents and the sound of alien languages mixing together. Bright holographic signs advertised everything from quantum engines to exotic foods, but Thrakvel paid no attention to any of it. He was looking for something else, anything else that might help his cub. That was when he saw it. A small sign written in simple letters that he could read in the common trade language. Wujin Medical Clinic, all species welcome. The sign was old and worn, not like the flashy advertisements of the major medical centers. Below it, another line read, "Traditional and modern medicine combined." The clinic was located in the human quarter of the station, an area that most other aliens avoided. Humans were considered a young and primitive species by galactic standards. They had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, and their technology was still far behind most other races. What could they possibly do that the advanced medical centers could not? But as Thrakvel stood there holding his dying cub, he realized he had run out of options. The greatest medical minds in the galaxy had failed. Perhaps it was time to try something different, even if it seemed hopeless. The human quarter was smaller and quieter than the rest of the station. The corridors were narrower, and the lighting was softer and warmer. Human voices could be heard speaking in their strange, quick language. The air smelled different here too, less sterile, more alive somehow. Thrackville found the clinic easily enough. It was a small building wedged between a human restaurant and a shop selling earth goods. Through the windows, he could see simple white walls and basic medical equipment that looked ancient compared to the crystal scanners and energy healers he had tried before. His pack members exchanged worried glances. "Pack leader," one of them said softly, "surely you do not mean to trust a human with the cub's life. They are barely more advanced than the prey animals on our homeworld." Thrackville looked down at Kitra's still face. Her breathing was growing even weaker. In the bright lights of the corridor, he could see that her lips had turned blue. Time was running out. "The advanced races have failed," he said quietly. "Perhaps it is time to try something else." But as he approached the clinic's entrance, his strength finally gave out. The stress of 3 sleepless days, the weight of carrying his cub, and the crushing fear of losing her all came together at once. His legs buckled, and he fell to his knees outside the clinic door, clutching Kitra protectively against his chest. The other Velthari warriors moved to help him, but Thrackville waved them away. He stayed there on the metal floor, holding his dying cub, and for the first time in years the mighty pack leader began to cry. His tears fell onto Kitra's fur as he whispered her name over and over, begging her to hold on just a little longer. Inside the clinic, a human man heard the sound of something large falling in the corridor. Dr. Wu Jin looked up from the medical files he was reading and walked to the window. What he saw made him drop his papers and rush toward the door. Outside was the largest alien he had ever seen, clearly in distress, holding what appeared to be a sick child. Without hesitation, Wu Jin opened the clinic door and stepped into the corridor, ready to help. Wu Jin moved quickly but carefully as he prepared Kitra's treatment. From a simple cabinet, he took out what looked like a bag of clear liquid and thin plastic tubing. To Thrackville, it appeared to be nothing more than water and primitive delivery systems. "This is a saline solution," Wu Jin explained as he worked. "It contains water and salt in the exact balance that living bodies need. We are going to give it to her slowly through this small tube in her arm." Boram helped him prepare the IV line, cleaning Kitra's small arm with gentle care. The Velthari warriors outside the clinic pressed closer to the windows, growling with concern as they watched strangers handle their pack leader's cub. "Just water and salt?" Thrackville asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "The Zentoran biomatrix healers used crystal energy that could rebuild her cells. The ethereal healers touched her spirit directly. And you want to give her salt water?" Wu Jin looked up at him as he inserted the tiny needle into Kitra's arm. The cub did not even stir. She was so deeply unconscious. "Pack leader, may I tell you a story from my homeworld?" Thrackville nodded, watching every movement as the clear liquid began to flow into his cub's body. "On Earth we have a saying, sometimes the simplest solutions are the best solutions. Long ago, before we had advanced medicine, human doctors discovered that many people who seemed to be dying were simply lacking water and salt. Travelers in deserts, soldiers in battles, children with fever. When we gave them these simple things, they lived." Boram added a second bag to the IV line. "This one contains electrolytes," she explained. "These are minerals that all living beings need for their hearts to beat and their muscles to work." "But the advanced scanners," Thrackville protested.
"Surely they would have seen if she needed water." "The scanners were looking for complex problems," Wu Jin said patiently.
They saw that her organs were failing, but they did not ask why. When a being has a severe allergic reaction, their body works so hard to fight the allergen that they lose water and minerals very quickly. The other doctors tried to fix the organ failure directly, but they did not treat the cause. A soft chime sounded, and Wu Jin checked a message on his simple communication device. "I asked my colleague Heiwan to come help us. She is a xenobiologist who studies how different species' bodies work. She knows more about Velthari physiology than I do." Minutes later, a human woman with gray hair and kind eyes entered the clinic. She moved with the confidence of someone who had spent years working with alien species. After a quick introduction, she examined Kitra with the same gentle care that Wu Jin had shown. "Interesting," Haiwan murmured as she looked at the blood test results. "Pack leader, tell me about your people's evolution. Did you develop on a world with very pure air?" Thrackville was surprised by the question but answered. Yes, our homeworld has thin, clean atmosphere. No pollution, no artificial chemicals. That explains it, Heywan said, turning to Wu Jin. Velthari respiratory systems are incredibly efficient, but they evolved in a very clean environment. When exposed to the complex artificial atmosphere of a space station, especially young ones with developing immune systems, they can have severe reactions. Like humans who are allergic to certain foods or plants, Wu Jin nodded. Their bodies fight so hard against the foreign substance that they make themselves sick. Heywan checked Kitra's pulse and breathing. The IV fluids are already helping. Her heart rate is slowing down and her blood pressure is improving. For the first time since this nightmare began, Thrakvel felt a tiny spark of hope. How long before we know if it is working? Hours, not days, Wu Jin replied. If I am right about what is wrong, she should begin to improve soon. As they waited, Wu Jin explained more about human medicine to the confused pack leader. He talked about how Earth doctors had learned that the body was very good at healing itself, if given the right support. Sometimes this meant using advanced technology, but often it meant providing the simple things that life required: clean water, proper nutrition, and time to recover. Your advanced galactic medicine is wonderful for many things, Wu Jin said. Crystal healing can repair broken bones instantly. Energy medicine can cure infections that would kill thousands. Artificial intelligence can diagnose diseases that no living mind could understand. But sometimes these powerful tools miss the simple problems. Like being thirsty, Boram added with a gentle smile. Thrakvel watched the clear fluids dripping into his cub's arm and found himself thinking about his own people's history. Long ago, before the Velthari joined the galactic community, they had their own simple healing methods. Herbal teas for fever, clean water for weakness, rest and time for recovery. Those methods had been abandoned as primitive when they gained access to advanced alien medicine. On our homeworld, he said slowly, the old healers used to say that the body knows how to heal itself. They believed their job was to help, not to fight the body's natural processes. That is exactly right, Heywan said with approval. Modern galactic medicine sometimes tries to override the body's natural healing. Human medicine tries to support it. 2 hours passed. Thrakvel never left Kitra's side, holding her small hand as the IV fluid slowly replaced what her body had lost. The Velthari warriors outside took turns watching through the windows, their earlier skepticism beginning to fade as they saw their pack leaders growing hope. Then, just as the third bag of fluids was being connected, something amazing happened. Kitra's breathing changed. It became deeper, more regular. The grayish color in her skin began to fade, replaced by a healthier silver. Pack leader, Boram said quietly. Look at her eyes. Thrakvel looked down and felt his heart leap. Kitra's eyelids were fluttering. For the first time in 2 days, his cub was trying to wake up. Kitra, he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. Little one, can you hear me? Slowly, carefully, Kitra's eyes opened. They were still weak and confused, but they were alert. She looked up at her father's face and made a small sound like a puppy trying to whine. She is thirsty, Wu Jin said with a smile. That is a very good sign. Her body is asking for what it needs. Boram brought a small cup of clean water and Wu Jin helped Kitra take tiny sips. The cub drank eagerly, though her movements were still weak and slow. Thrakvel felt tears streaming down his face again, but these were tears of joy and relief. His cub was alive. She was going to survive. How? He asked Wu Jin. How did you know what the others missed? Wu Jin checked Kitra's pulse again, nodding with satisfaction at its steady rhythm. Because we use different eyes, he said simply. The advanced doctors looked at her with machines that can see molecules and energy patterns. I looked at her with eyes that have seen thousands of sick beings get better with simple care. And because we remember that sometimes the oldest knowledge is the most valuable knowledge, Heywan added.